Hello, welcome back to Yellow Card Vanguard. Zystral here, and as you can see from the title, today we're going to be doing a quick dissection of Victor in Premium. Now, what does that mean, I hear you ask? Well, to give you some idea, over the last week and a bit, I've been playing quite a bit of Premium Victor, experimenting with various bits and pieces. And while I'm still not happy with the definitive list, or even happy with the testing results altogether, I thought I'd do is present to you guys some of the information that I've discovered and some of the things that I've picked up, mainly because I don't really plan on testing that much more Victor from this point onwards, but hopefully the things that I've done can guide you in your Victor testing going forwards. Now, there's a lot we can discuss here, things like the trigger lineup. For example, those of you who watch the stream will know that I've been playing an 8 stand build, all 8 of which go back into the deck, and those of you who've seen my list on Twitch and so on and so forth will see that I'm not playing the Brutal Jack combo anymore. There's that, the Brutal Jack lineup. There's the discussion of Kick versus New Cool Hank, Ninjad versus Golshachi, so many bits and pieces. But what I want to talk about mainly today is Dosh Sledge, and how he warps the Victor deck building process around him in a way that we haven't really seen since the end of G era. So speaking of the end of G era, we know that the build back then was very much focused on having the one rearguard get very large. So we had Sazander moving into Sevatamper, moving into Magical Performer. Of course, we had other bits and pieces as well, like for example Guns Dawn and Ninja that also gained power in their own right, but the main goal was to make that one rearguard really big and attack with it multiple times. And then as Premium evolved, we dropped those pieces because they just weren't worth as much payoff. We had new grade 1s that enabled restanding, we had new grade 2s that enabled restanding, and suddenly loading up this one rearguard didn't really make much sense anymore. Of course, until VPT 11. And Dosh Sledge is the one that changed all of that. Dosh Sledge has given Victor, and Nova Grappler as a whole actually, something that we've never really had reliably before, which is Guard Restrict. Sure, you had Drill the Duel, but Drill the Duel is not a good card, I think, outside of Standard. So let's put that aside for now. So now we're back onto the game plan of loading up this one rearguard and making it big and making it threatening, which is fine. But now we're back to the old classic Victor conundrum of half your deck needs to be enablers and half your deck needs to be payoff. And it's balancing that enabler to payoff ratio that I found to be quite difficult. Let me explain what I mean. At the beginning I mentioned how we're not going to talk too much about Brutal Jack. I'm taking that back now. Brutal Jack and the Riser custom combo is actually one of the things that I want to talk about the most here. So before Dosh Sledge and all the new stuff from VPT 11 got revealed, the main build relied on having Ninjad and Golshachi and Kick to restand your Brutal Jack. And the reason you played Brutal Jack at all was because of his interaction with Riser Custom while you were on your winning champ / universe ace turns. By having a Brutal Jack in front of a Riser Custom, you can use Brutal Jack's act to rest that column, and then that column will stand itself due to a combination of all the skills going off. So during your main phase, that's 2 activations of universe ace straight away before you enter your battle phase. That makes it much easier to hit 8 or 9 or whatever amount of drive checks for you to get your double restand off. And while it's still doable, it's a lot harder now without the Brutal Jack Riser Custom combo. And of course, if you're saying, but why do you call it Brutal Jack and Riser Custom? Well, the answer is pretty simple, right? For Dosh Sledge and Gambaragan, the new pieces of support. But then the question is that new piece of support worth it? And at first, I was like, yeah, for sure. Dosh Sledge is 29k at least on its own. It gives you the soul charge so you can get even more drive checks, and he has guard restrict on the last few attacks. It's perfect, right? But then what I found was that by building around the Dosh Sledge, you lost that extra restand. Because you no longer have the on-stride effect from Zubat Victor, because now you always want to be riding the new Premium Victor, Axel Victor, you only are limited to 2 restands in your front row, your 2 other rear guards, because Dosh Sledge is on Axel column. And sure, you can, re-ride multiple times, get multiple Axels, and have multiple restanders in the front row, but that's not really feasible. And the really awkward thing is that your good cards, such as Gerahawk, only stand the unit is boosting. And if you put your Dosh Sledge in front of your Gerahawk, you're losing 5k power, sure, but then you're gaining 7k from the boost, and then you're also potentially gaining 2 more k from the Gerahawk, plus whatever combinations there are. And it's an extra restand there, because then you have your Guns Dawn, or your Ninja or whatever, on the Axel column, so then when it attacks it will stand your Dosh Sledge, then the Gerahawk will stand your Dosh Sledge, and then your other rearguard column, be it Cool Hank or Kick or whatever, will stand your Dosh Sledge for the 3rd time before your Vanguard attacks. And that's one way of going about it. The other way of going about it is that you take on the role you had before where we didn't care what it restood, and you put Ninjad in front of Gerahawk. That way your Ninjad will restand in exchange for having 1 less restand on your Dosh Sledge. And it's this sort of like balancing of power load that I found really interesting. Because before, we didn't care what we restood. All you cared about was just getting a bunch of drives on your Universe Ace, getting a massive restand, and going from there. Whereas now that you're presented with the option to go deep in Dosh Sledge, taking that option is actually a little bit difficult. And something that I found really interesting is the use of resources and the use of early game. Now, when Victor had just fallen out of Premium for various reasons, and then we got our first wave of Nova Grappler support, second wave of Nova Grappler support in, I think it was VB7 or VB6, the one with Azure Dragons. People were saying, oh wow, Kick is solving exactly what Victor needed. And I really found that to be weird, because the problem with Victor throughout the entirety of G and going into early Premium was that it had zero early game. You were still relying on this Universe Ace, you were still relying on all of these G-era restanding pieces. All you could really add was new triggers. And Kick was supposed to somehow solve that? Like, I don't see how, because sure, it's a non-grade 3 restricted restand, but we don't need non-grade 3 restricted restands. We needed the ability to draw cards and survive until we can start striding. Or we need something to help us grade 2 game. And Kick did none of that. All it did was be a 14k Vanguard, and sometimes be a rearguard that restands things. And for it to restand your front row, anything else, you need to have a full front row. And that was really hard to do, especially in early Premium, where you didn't have that much plussing power. So that's why I kind of found it weird that Kick was held as like the saviour of the clan. And as we saw, Victor ended up not really being relevant until now, so it didn't really save the clan at all. Whereas Dosh Sledge and the new grade 3 Victor having a raw on-place plus, that's way more valuable. The other reason to abandon Brutal Jack and Rise of Custom is, as we mentioned, the on-place plus from the grade 3 Victor. Neither of them have Extreme Battle in the names, so you can't find either of them. And there have been rumours, I've been looking at the Nova Grappler Discord and seeing some things on Twitter, and so a comment that I just briefly glimpsed at was that, oh, you can play Runball, which is the old starter, instead of Rise of Custom, because it's an Extreme Battle you can fetch all of Victor. That way all you need is the Brutal Jack, and it's the same number of shield as Rise of Custom. The obvious difference being there is that Rise of Custom was actually a really, really good first ride, because it let you attack going first by giving you Soul, which you wanted, and having that early damage on the pressure was also really valuable. Of course, that early attack is no longer good because you want to damage deny things like Murakumo, things like Dark Irregulars, Spike Brothers. There are a lot of dangerous clans now that you have to be very careful against. In fact, Nova Grappler being one of those, almost all of your restand effects, barring Cool Hank and Ganbaragan, are locked behind Counterblast. So then you have to look at yourself, okay, a lot of my restand effects are Counterblast reliant. What if I get damage denied? Which is one argument for playing stands, but that's a whole other separate discussion. My point is that, especially in the current metagame, which is very early game focused, but also very damage centric, having that game plan of just play a bunch of stuff that restands is super unreliable now. And that's the other benefit to the Brutal Jack Rise of Custom combo, is that they require no resources. You just put them down, rest them, and they'll restand again. And that's honestly pretty valuable. Whether or not it's worth it, because the Brutal Jack Rise of Custom column caps out at 27 maximum, is a whole nother story. But that's sort of what I'm experimenting with, and I've been playing games with and without that engine, and I've been happier in the games that I don't have the Brutal Jack and Rise of Custom, because it means that when I'm trying to go off, it's one less piece I need to find. When you're playing just Ganbaragans, Ninjads, Jerhawks, what have you, everything is basically a piece, and you can just slam whatever down and just focus all on the Dosh Sledge. But if you're playing Dosh Sledge together with the Brutal Jack, that's a little bit of excess redundancy, especially when Victor can already find Dosh Sledge, and then you now need to find the Brutal Jack, which is dead without its counterpart, and then you only have so many front row slots that you want to fill up. So having a Brutal Jack and a Dosh Sledge both in your front row, that's going to be one less restand you have access to. That is, unless you call over the Brutal Jack with a restander, in which case you've just got neg 1 just to get that drive, which seems kind of not worth it either. I could talk a little bit more about the trigger lineup, but I think that's going to be a discussion for a later video, especially when I start finalizing a deck list and going through that. But I do want to quickly touch on Energy Girl. I've played 2 games with Energy Girl and she was garbage in both games. And the reason for that is really simple. Jerhawk is just a better Energy Girl in almost every way. Sure, he costs Counterblast, but he draws you a card and he makes much more relevant numbers. And the second thing is, Energy Girl's timing of returning to the deck is very awkward. It's after her battle, which means that you have to either not boost and then restand thing in front of her, or you have to boost with her straight away and use her restand shuffle back straight away. And both of those are not really great options compared to Catch-A-Wall, who you can stand or at any time to get his stand off and have the same effect. And beyond that, you actually have not a lot of space on your board either. Like we said, you have a lot of things that are on attack stand between Cool Hank, Kick, Ninja, and so on and so forth. And then your back row, you're going to have at least one shout in your back row. Like, if Nova Grappler doesn't hit shout in the early game, it's going to be a really, really tough game to begin with. So you probably have a shout behind the Vanguard, rested, and then you probably have a Gerahawk on one of the two columns. And then on your other column is going to be that Catch-You-All or another Gerahawk or what have you. And having anything else, any other booster you have, is better than Energy Girl. And sure, Energy Girl is a better booster than, say, Arashid or another Shout or what have you. But then, if you're in that stage where you're having to boost with one of those cards instead of something else that's actually good, then the game is probably going bad for you already. And I don't think that Victor is a deck that can afford to play towards the floor. Nova Grappler has historically been a deck that plays towards its ceiling. Do as much as it can, as intensely as it can, as powerful as it can. And so playing to this what-if scenario, I think, is really unreliable. Of course, things like Damage Denial is you can't control that at all. And that's a shame. But I think the reason that the Brutal Jack Riser custom engine is not reliable enough is because it's a better floor. It doesn't increase your ceiling. It gives you 2 extra drive checks, sure, but then so does hitting stand triggers, and they're both pretty high roll as it is. It's just a case of Brutal Jack isn't reliant on you flipping stands off the top of your deck. And it's just that case of they don't bring enough impact. Like, when you're winning the game, Brutal Jack Riser Custom doesn't win you the game harder, whereas an extra Ninjad or an extra Gerahawk, they win you the game harder. And that's kind of the approach I think you need to take to playing Premium Victor. It's all a case of find the shout, win or lose on the shout. It's kind of the problem with Dosh Sledge as well, because Dosh Sledge obviously wants you to win your shout matchup so you can find the Dosh Sledge. But at the same time, because you're now standing a lot less, you don't need the soul from the shout as badly anymore, so shout's no longer a straight win-win. Like, sure, you do still need a bunch of soul, but Dosh Sledge soul charges as well as, you know, cutting off access to one more restander. So now it's this, again, this balancing game of, do you really focus on the Dosh Sledge, or do you try and like play around the Gerahawks and your stand triggers and other stuff? And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm still not happy with my list. This was just me kind of talking for the sake of talking. You know, I promised people on stream a while ago that I would talk about Victor for a bit and maybe even do a video. And over the last week, like I said, I've been doing a bunch of testing and I'm still not happy with what I've got. But this is me showing you guys the results of what I have so far. This is me showing you, here's what I've tested, here's what I like about it, here's what I don't like about it, and then here's the facts as to why this is good and why this might not be good. And I think I've been pretty objective here. You know, I've said that each line of play has its merits and downsides. I think it's just up to you guys to like do your own testing and figure out where to go from here. I know it's not really much content as per se. It's not as informative or as deep analysis as I would have liked in our other videos, but at the same time, it's something that's been bugging me for a few days now. You know, I've been playing like 3 or 4 games a day, and it's been like, something feels missing here, or oh, this is not quite as good here, and stuff like that. And I didn't really have anyone to like voice those concerns to. So this is kind of like me getting that off my chest, as it were. That way I can sleep easy at night, not having to be worried about, oh, Victor. But yeah, you know, I don't claim to be the best Nova Grappler player here. That's why, you know, I look at Twitter, I look at Discords, I look at various discussion groups on Facebook and try and just see what everyone else is doing. Like, you know, I can be pretty dismissive, I'll respect that. But at the same time, you know, someone on Discord said, oh, what about Runball? I thought, okay, that might work, but then here's some good things, here's some bad things. What about this PG? What about draws? What about crits? And so on and so forth. And I think every argument there has some good basis for it. It's just not really worth my time to like go through and analyze what everyone's saying, as opposed to just figuring out myself. But of course, the reason I'm making this video is because I haven't been able to figure out myself. So if you've done any bit of Premium Victor testing, then sure, you know, feel free to leave a comment. Tell me what you have been playing, what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, what you feel is missing, what you feel is strong. Who knows? You know, we can work together and maybe figure something out. But yeah, that's just gonna be it for me. Hopefully, I've helped guide someone on their Victor testing a bit more. Maybe they've discovered something new, they've thought of, you know, a eureka moment, what about this card or whatever. Yeah, feel free to let me know. Thanks always for watching our content. And as always, thank you to Strictly Broken TCG for being a sponsor of the channel and myself. And you can use the code SBTCG Yellow Card at Strictly Broken for discounts on your playset and playset pre-orders, including Victor in VBT11 when that comes out. I've been Zystral, thank you very much for watching. As always, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, follow our socials down below, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.